Hey, what's up everybody, it's Matt, and in this video we're going to talk about how you can build your very own home flight simulator, specifically a Cessna 172 or another small aircraft of your choice, and about how much you can expect to put into one of these. So today specifically we're going to be looking at the process, we're going to be looking at the flight controls, we're going to look at the avionics, we're going to look at the panel. It's all going to really begin with what you need. What are your requirements? What is it that you want to build a flight simulator for? Do you want to build one because you just want to have some fun? You're a tech geek like me and you just want to play with stuff and twist the knobs on the avionics? I did, it's okay. If that's what you want, then grab the avionics that you need. But you need to identify what you want it for so that you can identify what avionics, what flight controls are going to be most needed. Are you going to go with some of the higher end avionics, or do you just need to get like a flat screen monitor and you can just build all of your six-pack right into like a touchscreen monitor? If you just want to have some fun, grab yourself some Microsoft Flight Simulator and you could probably use whatever PC you have. But if you're like me and you just want to kind of play around, grab a few items, I knew when I started this project that I wanted to get better using the Garmin 430 and the 530 so that I could use it in the aircraft that I was flying in real life. So if you know that, grab those items and start there. If you decide, you know what, I like this, maybe I want to do virtual ATC, maybe I want to do Pilot Edge, then figure out what you're going to need in order to go down that path so that you can get the correct items before you get the panel involved. We're going to talk about the flight controls, the flight avionics, what you're going to need. Maybe it's Microsoft Flight Simulator, maybe it's X-Plane, maybe you need a PC, maybe you can build this whole thing right on an existing Mac that you have so that you can build your very own home flight simulator and have a lot of fun doing it and really enjoy that process. So it didn't always look like this in these videos and these clips that I'm showing you. So we did have, I would say, some slightly humble beginnings. It began as a visualization. We used Keynote to throw some ideas together and look at what would an end product actually look like. And one of the first things that we actually got was a TPM setup like this from a guy named, I think his name was Matt actually. I may be wrong on that, but if you go to Amazon, I'll leave the links for this down in the description. And it'll work with PC and Mac. It's pretty plug and play. You might have to assign keys or something, but this is what we started with, and it worked out really, really well. 3D printed. It was a little bit small. I thought the whole thing was a little bit small in my hands, but it worked well. It did the trick, and for the price point, I really couldn't complain. It gets good ratings. The next thing that we did was we wanted to get the GNS 530. So we were able to get a bundle, the GNS 530, GNS 430 bundle that looks like this here. Came with the mount back here, so if we didn't want to put it into a panel, we could just put it right there on the mount. And the beginning, our humble beginnings looked a lot like this right here. Actually, just a desk with a couple devices and a yoke with a monitor, and that was it. The Garmin G5s, which I also picked up, which is, let's see if they're here, that's these, so we're up another $6.99 here for this, and these things were great. I loved these. Between the 430, the 530, there's a lot of cords. When you have the 530, the 430, and two G5s, you have almost, I think, 12 cords between HDMI, power, USB. That's 12 cables. That's a lot of cables going somewhere. Just keep that in mind as you continue to build your setup. All right, so let's switch gears. The next thing that we really needed to kind of transition to was the panel itself and how we were going to create this and how we were going to make the actual steam gauges work, how we were going to implement, how we were going to make that work with X-Plane, and how we were going to make that work with the rest of our panel. So we are using X-Plane. We're on X-Plane 11 right now as of the time of this recording, and we're working towards getting everything active inside of X-Plane 12. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because as we're setting this up inside of a new simulator, X-Plane 12, we will be making videos on that as well. We turn to State Level Avionics here. John over at State Level is an amazing dude, and he's a pilot. He really stepped up to the plate and helped us build one amazing panel. If it wasn't for John, I don't know that this panel would have turned out the way that it would have, the way that it sits today. So did some consulting back and forth, gave him some designs, he gave me back some CAD drawings, said, how about this? And, you know, so we bounced some ideas off of each other. We ended up with what you see today. All right, so John, amazing dude. Bottom line, get in touch with these guys over at State Level, and they'll help you move in the next direction. So where I wanted to go with this was the next thing that we really were looking for was the actual panel where you would put a 6-pack. So we made this decision to pick this particular monitor up because of John's recommendation. Thank you, John, for that. And we didn't look back. We were using an iPad before this, and it just wasn't connecting. It wasn't doing what we wanted. So once we made the upgrade to this Yo-Yo, we actually have a 15.6-inch version of it, and we haven't looked back. This thing's been amazing ever since we started, and it works great with Sim Innovations. So I've actually really loved using Air Manager on the desktop. So instead of using it on the iPad, we're using it straight on the desktop. Never had any issues with it connecting. We just have to make sure the plugin is installed. I did have a small lapse where it didn't connect to X-Plane 12, and we realized that, oh, yeah, that's right, there's a plugin. We got to go install that. Air Manager V4 for desktop is what we picked up, and we also used it with the Knobster. So if you're using a touchscreen monitor, which you should be, where you can touch the monitor and whatever you're touching will highlight, and then you can use the Knobster to control whatever is on that particular screen where you're showing that information. There's also software for the G5 as well. We actually ended up using the G5 software from Sim Innovations. Anyway, yeah. So I figure it's probably very fitting to tell you guys a little bit about the computer itself, the hardware that's actually running this. I did look at some companies online that do actual PC builds for flight simulators, and I wasn't totally, there's a few places that probably would have done a fine job, but I ended up going to a place locally. So let's look at what we have on here. First big one is graphics, GeForce RTX. This is the 3080. This one's pretty good. I can run a lot on this. This was about a $1,600 investment, probably the biggest piece. So I wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to run this thing smoothly and really nicely and without any problems. But we do have a Z590 Aorus Pro AX. This is the motherboard that this whole thing is built on. As far as the processor, we do have an i9. I do have an i9 processor. To run everything, I've got this a slightly upgraded power supply. It's an 850 watt platinum power supply. We did have some issues with a water-cooled cooling system, so I ended up taking that back and ended up having more of a fan, just a strong fan in there. This thing will run pretty warm. So that's all on the PC. Let's go take a look at the actual desk itself, because the desk was actually custom created for this particular flight simulator. So one of the most rewarding aspects, parts of this flight simulator build was actually the custom desk that we built that accompanied this flight simulator. So what that allowed me to do was really take what I would say was a congested desk that looked like this. It was actually a freebie from work at the time, and it really was not accommodating to clamps or things that I wanted to slide underneath it to try and clamp something to the bottom of it. We turned that into something that looks a little bit more like this. Definitely a lot cleaner and just more fun, more vibrant. So the foundational piece of this was a Home Depot butcher block that we picked up from, guess where? Home Depot. They have some really nice butcher blocks there. They do come unfinished. You will have to seal them and stain them almost immediately after opening the plastic on them. but if you can find one that you like, I definitely recommend picking it up. The one that we're using specifically is 6 feet by 25 inches. I would, kind of looking back, I kind of recommend picking up maybe an 8 foot by 30 inch version, because there's no room, once the whole thing is set up, there's no room for a keyboard or actually using the computer as an actual computer. But there's room if you have an L-shaped table. You could have some secondary stuff. You could do a lot of your work right there in the second part of the table. We went to Amazon, we found a lot of options, but what we went with was basically just the legs. This is an electric stand-up desk that rises and lowers at the push of a button. You can get some optional casters for the bottom of it. It keeps everything from warping, from bending, from sinking. The next piece is cable and cable management. So we have a cable run underneath. We just screwed, this thing is about six and a half feet long, and we're able to run all of our wires through this. So we had this whole table flipped upside down to begin with, and ran all of the cables that we knew we were going to be able to run with it upside down, and then that really helped a ton. Now we also purchased this power strip surge protector. This mounted right on the bottom side of the desk there, and we have plenty of power outlets in different positions there. We got this, put this in the back left corner, so it's not something that most people would see very often, but just a little desk mounted power strip. So it gives me 2 additional power outlets, and then it gives me a USB-C and a USB-A outlet, so I can run that right to the back, and then I have access to these ports through the panel itself, which is really cool. 2 other things that we had purchased were the USB-C, USB-A hubs. This one here, and this one has been really good. It was kind of pricey, but we needed more plugs. I would actually recommend just buying 2 of these. Make sure you get the ones with the fast data ports, at least USB 3.0. Again, I'll leave links to the stuff that I'm pointing out. So lots of fun stuff that we put into here. We actually also had a magnet that we picked up, and it could actually be used as a gun mount. Definitely loved that, and having that option available. Once we had everything set up, we just flipped that desk back over and started putting stuff on there, and eventually once the panel comes in, we will have ourselves a foundation for one amazing flight simulator, which is really starting to come together here. All right, so at this point we could stop, we could call it good. We could say, yeah, we have a flight simulator on a desk with flight controls and flight avionics, and it's functional. It's very workable at this point. It would give you a lot of flexibility because you haven't put everything into a panel and said, this is it, this is all that we're going to do. We're done now. But what fun would that be? Let's take things another level, and let's see where this whole flight simulator panel from Stay Level Avionics is at.
Okay, so this next panel is pretty comprehensive here. You can see we've got it pretty much fully populated except for the prop wash cutout. We didn't get that component from the customer. They were waiting on that. And then the Yoko will ship separately. Right here is going to be the pedestal with a Vernio throttle as well as a trim wheel.
Wow, okay, so John just opened up a whole new can of worms with some of the other avionics, the flight controls, that we really haven't even touched on. So real quick, let's run through those, and after that, maybe it'll be delivered. Maybe it'll be sitting at the door and we can go grab that, right? So the Flight Sim Yoke, the Yoko Plus, this is also sold by Virtual Fly, also sold by Stay Level Avionics. All right, also the Vernio Plus down here. We grabbed one of these, as well as this fit right into the pedestal made by Stay Level Avionics. Just a perfect feel. You can do the thing where you fine tune the mixture. Yeah, let's look at some of the other things here. The trim wheel. All right, the trim wheel. This one's sold through Sporties, but you can also get it through Flight Velocity. I think this is who I got it through. I really like this unit. The USB cord is connected. And then you can run it through the back. It connects to the pedestal that came from Stay Level Avionics. There's no tension on it, but you kind of get used to that pretty quick. And then you have a sensitivity control here. Perfect unit to go along with the pedestal and the TPM unit. Absolutely love this combination. Originally, the way that we built this was for this particular switch panel here. We ended up having to take this out and send it back. I sent this back while I was moving across the country. We had some issues with the ignition here. They did send it back, fixed it, did not charge me for it as far as I know. And well, I've had the LG in there ever since, and I just never swapped it out. So this is what's in there now. It's more of the play school feel, but it's got the gear down, gear up. It's got the switches in here, work fine. And the ignition switch, I don't feel like there's any possibility that it might break on me. So this is the digital transponder that we got. It's just an old school transponder. There's no gimmicks to it, just real simple. You just punch in the transponder code. We also have the Real SimGear GFC 500 Autopilot. With the Real SimGear plug-in, you just scan for all new devices. Anything that's plugged in that happened to come from Real SimGear is automatically found, to include the Real SimGear GMA 350 audio panel, which is also in there. And the reason I've got that is also for ATC virtual ATC services. So I like using this. It's probably one of the most widely used things that I have on this flight simulator, is just being able to reach up into the corner, hit that little red button, and pause the simulation. I know it's something stupid and simple, but it's really awesome. So make sure to grab one of these. Again, I'll leave links for these in the description as well. So once you've purchased these items, purchase what it is that you want for your simulator. Make sure to test it all with your flight sim, whether it's X-Plane or Microsoft Flight Simulator, or whatever it is. Make sure to test it out first, and then make sure that it works. Make sure that everything's functional. Last thing you want to do is solidify everything into a panel and then find out that none of it works. Let's go see if my flight sim panel came in. Oh, and one more thing. Yeah, we may have picked up one of the Samsung CRG9s and went widescreen. Oh yeah, that's right. No more bezel in the middle of the two screens.
When someone asks me how much I've spent on my setup,
an estimation of somewhere between 700 billion and $1,300,300,000,000.
Okay, at this stage where it is right now, after doing some calculations, we came in about a skosh over 5 figures. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask you guys a big favor. I want you guys to come watch another one of my videos where I'm gonna break down the entire cost of this, but because it went through so many stages, I'm going to break down the cost analysis for each one of those different stages that I think are relevant to you, and then I'm going to give you my advice on what I would have done differently the next time and build a new stage, and then give you the cost analysis, cost breakdown on that. Okay? I hope that that's helpful. I hope that you guys really loved this video, and I really hope to see you guys the next time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, see ya. Don't tell my wife. She still thinks I spent like $2,000 on this thing.